Hello everyone, I'm Greg Weaver. Welcome to the Audio Analyst. Pardon me. Before the COVID lockdowns, my colleague and good friend, Maurice Jeffries, a gifted listener and writer who currently contributes to Positive Feedback and Enjoy the Music, would make an annual spring pilgrimage to the Midwest to spend time here in my listening room listening to my current reference rig. Though he hasn't been able to make the trip since the spring of 2019, the lure of the arrival of the full complement of Valve Amplification Company's statement products, the 2-box statement phono stage, the 2-box statement line stage, and the pair of statement 452 IQ music block mono amplifiers provided too strong to ignore and put an end to his nearly 3-year moratorium. We were able to spend the better part of a 3-day weekend listening and catching up. Now, because Maurice is one of just a handful of industry members and reviewers to have had the opportunity to witness both the launch of the original KRONOS Discovery Turntable in the fall of 2021 and to have visited Montreal to experience the KRONOS Discovery RS tonearm in Louis Desjardins' personal listening studio, I felt him uniquely qualified to weigh in on the matter of my current reference LP transcription system, the KRONOS Pro Limited Edition patented contra-rotating platter turntable with its supercapacitor power supply 1, the newly released Discovery RS resonance suppression tonearm, fitted with an Etsuro Gold moving coil cartridge using the Stealth Helios phono cable. Here is our conversation.
All right, everybody. Here he is, my colleague and dear friend, Maurice Jeffries. He happens to write for a couple of magazines I write for as well, Positive Feedback and EnjoyTheMusic.com. And Maurice has been kind enough to join me here. He does this fairly often. We've had some breaks because of COVID, but he likes to come up here and hang out and listen to my rig. And
it's been almost 3 years, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been a while, yeah. So, but he came up today because he is also one of the few reviewers who has had the experience that Dr. David Robinson and I have had, where we've heard the original Discovery Turntable with the Chronoscope arm. I heard it in August. You guys heard it in October of 2021.
Yeah. Amazing experience.
Yeah. And then he's also been to Louis Desjardins in Montreal and heard his system with the Discovery RS arm, and he's heard it on the Discovery table. Now, what we want to talk about today is how the synergy, I think, between the original KRONOS Pro LE turntable and the new Discovery RS tonearm, because to my estimation, I feel that it was very close to the original Discovery and Chronoscope performance that I heard.
Absolutely. When I first heard the Discovery, and that included me, David Robinson, Bill Parrish, Louis was there that weekend.
Yeah.
And the first thing that struck us was the absolute absence of noise. No hiss, no wow and flutter, whooshing sounds, none of that existed.
Well, we've talked about there's no groove rush.
There's no groove rush at all.
And that's, I mean, to me, and I've said this in my earlier videos on the tonearm when I was up at Louis and the one I did specifically on the arm, it seems rather apparent at this point that what we've always considered to be groove rush, the native sound of a needle dragging through vinyl, was apparently an artifact of some kind of resonance between the cartridge, tonearm, body, and the record.
Absolutely.
Because, dude, I loved watching your face yesterday while we were doing some of these records, and I was like, where's the groove rush? You're like, shit, where'd it go? Where is it?
It's non-existent. And to have that experience, and I wish more of you could have that experience, really should recalibrate how you approach vinyl. Not that many of us can afford these systems, but you should hear them so that you can disabuse yourself of the nonsense that's peddled on so many sites and by so many naysayers that vinyl isn't a high-resolution playback source, because it really is. It really. By the way, this doesn't mean that you can't get good, pleasant sound from a system that costs a fraction of what this system costs.
Absolutely.
But if you want to hear what the best vinyl replay sounds like, I think you have to consider the KRONOS turntable tone arm combinations. to represent probably one of the 2 or 3 best systems out there, and in fact, I think it's probably the best turntable outfit. And I haven't heard as many as Greg has.
Well,
in that stratosphere.
Well, interestingly enough, Dr. David Robinson agrees with both of our sentiments that the KRONOS Discovery Turntable with the Discovery RS tonearm represents a complete pinnacle, a new paradigm for LP playback. And we've talked about this, he and I and you and I. There are moments with certain pressings, not all records, but with certain pressings, where what I hear with this system, honestly, it exceeds open reel playback.
And I don't have the experience that you have with open reel playback, but of the real playback that I have heard, especially at shows like Exponent, I have the general sense that the Discovery RS playback system rivals in immediacy and transparency that experience. I mean, tape has its own wow and flutter artifacts. I mean, it's a mechanical playback device, and so it will never be completely noiseless. And that's where the KRONOS system, I think, really shines. Is it just doesn't have a footprint of its own that I can discern.
Cool,
Something else, and tell me whether you've had this experience. I had it quite often here over the weekend listening to your system. But the Discovery RS tonearm, and you have the Pro, not the Discovery turntable.
Correct.
But your system is, I would say, almost as good as the original Discovery Chronoscope tonearm that Louis came out with. Was it last year or earlier this year?
It was well, the original Discovery turntable with the Chronoscope tonearm came out in August of 2021.
Okay, so
this stuff came out this spring.
And
these new tonearms.
Yeah, the Discovery RS tonearm, which is about 25,000.
I think it's 26. Yeah.
26 with supply chain and inflation.
Yeah.
On the Pro, which is what, a little bit more than half the price of the Discovery.
Well, they're pretty much. They made 250 of them.
Mm-hmm.
I believe there are very few left. Although there have been some trade-ins, which is how I got mine. When somebody traded in number 113 of 250 on their Discovery, and I purchased that through their recycling program.
Amazing.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful turntable. If you haven't seen it before, go online and take a look at it.
I'll have pictures of it under our while we're talking, and they'll be information for people to see.
The KRONOS Pro with the Discovery RS tonearm sounds so strikingly close to the original Discovery turntable with the original Chronoscope tonearm that with a blindfold on, I could probably be fooled into mistaking one for the other. It's the same gestalt, the same overall experience this system provides as the Discovery. At a much lower price if you can get one on a trade-in. If you have a Sparta, a full-blown Sparta, and you want to upgrade, this is the time to do it, I should suspect. Because there are folks who are going to want those Spartas too.
True enough. Look, I had the Sparta for going on 6 years. You heard it here 3 or 4 times.
Yep, love it.
Dude, it's a full-blooded KRONOS.
It is.
The fact that
no ifs, ands, and buts
some people don't get, and there was a very famous analog reviewer who said that can't possibly work, and he'd never heard it.
Heard it. That's right. Absolutely.
Now, I don't mind someone saying I don't see how that can work, but to condemn a product without having heard it, that's just wrong. You can't.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's when like Dr. David Robinson and I were talking about it, and when somebody says, "What do you think of this product?" I haven't heard it. That's all I say. I haven't heard it. I don't know.
It looks interesting, but I haven't heard it, so I can't make any offer an informed opinion on the product.
The entire point of this contra-rotational thing is that, and in the review I did of the KRONOS back in 2015 for Absolute Sound, I talked about the contra-rotational propellers used on the Kamov helicopters, where they have twin shafts. It allows them to remove the rotor, the tail rotor, which takes about 30% of the power, because there's no torsion thrown into the body that you have to countermand. And that, when that is done that way, when you're doing a single platter turntable, as the torque loads up, you're at an equilibrium, but it's an elevated state of equilibrium. And anything that affects the turntable in terms of vibration is magnified by that. And dude, I would argue that you're not going to hear cleaner more accurate mid-range, and in terms of micro dynamics,
off the charts.
dude, it's
off the
phenomenal.
charts. Off the charts.
It's phenomenal.
Well, one thing we did yesterday was listen to different pressings of the same
I
recordings.
do that all the time.
And it's so fun. I don't do it nearly as much. I tended, before this weekend, to think of it as a sort of a fetishistic experience that I don't have time for that. I was wrong in that respect, because for listeners and reviewers, it's important to understand how the Classics Records version of a pressing sounds versus
An
a
original
one-step
pressing.
versus an original pressing, and sometimes the differences are profound.
Yeah.
We listened to the one-step of the Jeff Rotel LP.
The UHQR.
The UHQR, the Jeff Rotel.
Yeah.
And was it a reissue that you had, the $22 reissue? Or,
Well, yeah.
or was that just an original copy?
No, the original copy doesn't sound that good.
Okay.
We listened to the Analog Productions UHQR that was $125, and we listened to the 2011, the 30th, 71, 81, 91. Okay, the 40th anniversary of the thing, the one that was done by Stephen Wilson, that you can still buy for $22.95.
And
Brand
there was no comparison in sound quality terms. The $22 version walked all over the $125 version.
It was so much more immersive, so much more bloom, so much more body, more texture,
more scaling,
everything.
soundstation with depth and height, all that stuff that we loved.
Yeah, the UHQR was dead silent.
Yes.
There was no noise, but it was not immersive. There was no, you
Didn't
weren't
have
drawn
that
into
life.
the music.
Absolutely,
Yeah, it was not.
absolutely.
There was so much more vibrancy on.
Well, and this is a cautionary tale about buying expensive reissues. Some are worth the money, some aren't. And so, how do you pick and choose? Listen to reviewers who have listened to that stuff and pay attention to those comments. And then use your ears.
Well, and I screwed up because based on my reaction, or based on my experience with the Aqualung Jethro Tull, I did not buy the kind of blue
Which
that you brought.
I did buy.
Yeah. So, I mean, I have the classic issue that came out, I want to say it came out in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
It's a 4LP, or I'm sorry, it's a 2LP. They're both 33. And record one, side one is the normal speed, the different
incorrect speed,
right?
yeah.
And side two is side two. Then on the second record, side one is the original side one at the corrected speed,
Yep.
and side four is an alternate take of flamenco sketches.
And it's about a quarter of a step interval for you musicians out there who are playing along, and you.
I think it was like
players.
1.5% or something on the tape.
And so it makes a difference. I mean, playing along, you realize that, and I forget from my college days whether my saxophone was either too sharp or too flat, but was in tune. But because the record was playing at the wrong speed, it threw everything out of alignment. And you know, all the jazz musicians in the world are aware of this. You just have to make adjustments to play along.
Yeah. Well, so that had been my favorite pressing to this point. And the point I was making was I did not buy this based on my experience with
The Jethro
Tull, because it was not worth to me, that record to me is not worth the price.
Yeah.
I have better sounding versions.
Yes.
Much better sounding versions. And not just versions that I like better, they're actually better sounding. This, I think we both agreed, had a little more texture to it.
A little more transparency.
More transparency.
And definition and air around the instruments.
Yeah.
And
Now we did on the classic records reissue I have from the early 2000s. We both liked the saxophone tonality just a bit better.
And I thought that Bill Evans stood out in the mix a little bit more prominently than on this version. But overall, I think we preferred the UHQR version for its overall musicality, its transparency, its quietude. It's worth the $125.
Yeah. So anyway, good records, great turntables. If you don't know, I did an episode back, I can't remember the number, I'd have to look it up and I'll put it under the episode here, but I did a thing where I talked about the real nonsense of these digiphiles, which I had no problem with. I'm much more digitally agnostic than, well, format agnostic than I have been.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, what I do not approve of, and what really riles me, is digital folks saying, digital is the only high resolution format. I don't care if you don't like records, don't listen to them, that's fine. But don't fool yourself into thinking that vinyl is not a high resolution format. It is as high as any format out there. Tape, open reel, digital,
streaming.
Well, streaming. Yeah.
It's just
It's very good. Give streaming another 15 years.
Yes, I think that's right.
And it's there. It's close now, and it's going to be fabulous
Yes.
soon. So, anyway, our point was we still love digital, but we really do prefer analog when it's done right.
Especially if you have a KRONOS turntable and a $26,000 Discovery RS tonearm to drive your system. Not to mention all the other expensive paraphernalia.
Yeah, well.
But even if you can't afford that, you should find a dealer and listen and make a list of the 5 things that stand out in your head as outstanding from that system. And then at a lower price point, try and find a system that provides as much of that quality, sound quality, as you can.
It's a great point.
You just owe it to yourselves to educate your ears and to understand that there really is great sound, transcendental sound available, albeit at a high cost, but you can use this to recalibrate and, how should we put it?
Well,
establish a benchmark that you can use to assess other equipment.
Sure.
That's the value.
And
in and of itself.
Another part of the value, I agree with you that setting a reference so that a long time ago, in the early 70s, a guy who owned a stereo chain of stores called Opus One, the guy's name was Tasso Spanos. And one of the things he taught me when I was just a teenager, I was 17 or 18.
Wow.
I walked in, and I told you the story about the Sequoia Model 1 tuner, and I was like, I can't afford that. He's like, you don't want to hear it? Anyway, he was genuinely interested in me hearing it. He didn't care if I could buy it.
Absolutely.
But one of the things he taught me that goes along with this whole thing about making, listening to something and making the notes, he wasn't wealthy. He was okay, but his wife and her friends all had nice, expensive fur coats. He couldn't afford to buy her a nice, expensive, real fur coat. And it hit him that he had no idea what made a fur coat different from the fun furs of the time.
Yep.
So he went to furriers and looked at how they're stitched, how they were lined, how they were put together, how they felt.
Touch and feel.
And then
Absolutely.
he went to the fun furs and found the one that most closely approximated that look to buy her a fur. And he swears his wife's friends never knew the difference.
Yeah, there you go.
So the point that we're making is the reference is important. The best reference you can get allows you to make better choices with lesser priced products. And you have to live within your budget. Everybody does. We get that. The other point that I want to make with some of these record purchases is if you're into vinyl, and if you have a respectably good, I don't care if your system's $500, $5,000, $50,000, $500,000, or $1 million. I'm playing very close to that $1 million range because I'm very fortunate to be in this industry.
It's silly but wonderful.
Well, the point is, the best record on your system is going to sound better than the worst record on your system, and the chances are, at some time, some point in the future, you may step up. So it doesn't hurt to have a good recording to begin with. So
Absolutely.
Maurice, thank you so much, buddy.
My pleasure, brother.
It's
My
always,
pleasure as
it's
always.
always fun hanging out.
I'm going to borrow your KRONOS Discovery for
I don't think so. No. Hey, we didn't mention, towards the end of October, I believe, Louis is going to send you the KRONOscope art.
Yes, absolutely. So I'll be reporting on how that sounds
with
on
your
my Sparta.
on your Sparta. So we'll probably talk to him about that too. So, and I know you'll have a written review about that.
Yeah, indeed.
So, guys, watch for that.
Stay safe.
Everybody, thanks for watching today. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.
I hope it is apparent why it is such a pleasure to have Maurice visit. And I want to express my thanks for his taking the time to share his thoughts and experiences on these matters with us today. And thank you for taking the time to drop by today. Please click the subscribe and notify buttons if you haven't already. Be sure to share your comments and questions. And please don't forget to like and to share links to your favorite episodes with your friends or on social media. Further information on supporting the channel may be found in today's description section or at my website, theaudioanalyst.com. Please stay safe and keep the music playing. Till next time, cheers.